Hi, it's Mark out here with you at the range today. I came out to do a little bit of shooting, but I thought while I was out here, I would go ahead and talk to you just a little bit about replacing the trigger in a Glock pistol. And this could apply to any pistol that you own, but I've replaced the trigger in one of my Glocks here, and just what kind of a difference does it make? How effective is it? Well, that's a very broad subject, obviously, but what I'm going to talk about is the trigger that I've got in here. It's from a company. You go online, you can find them at glocktriggers.com is the name, and the good reason for that is because they take Glock OEM parts, the original manufacturer parts. They take those and they polish every part on them. They modify them to a small degree. They can actually provide different springs and connectors that will turn it into a competition trigger, but that was not the purpose of this one. The purpose of this one was to give me a better trigger on my gun that would also be suitable for a carry trigger. I didn't want it too light, but wanted it to improve. Now, I've done a lot of shooting with the Glock pistols. I've owned, in the last 10 years, I think I've owned 7 Glocks. I've carried a Glock 23 for the last 10 years, so I've had a lot of experience shooting them. And this is the first one I've ever actually replaced the trigger in. I bought a competition Glock at one time that somebody had used for competition, and it had a little bit better trigger in it, but this is the first one that I actually use and carry that I have made that modification in and changed out. The trigger that I've got in this one is a skimmer trigger from glocktriggers.com. It is modified to produce a better carry trigger, not a competition trigger. The result of what the company has done with this particular trigger, and it is a drop-in. It's user-friendly. When you get it, you can drop this stuff in. There's only one little part that's hard to get in, and you would see that when you see a picture of it. If you go to glocktriggers.com and look at this trigger and disassemble there, you will see there's a little washer on there that's hard to get around it, but that's just an irritation more than anything else. You can get it done, but it's easy to drop in and change out. What this trigger does here is, if you own a Glock, you know what I'm talking about when I say the take-up on the trigger pull is very, very long. Now, this has no magazine in it. The gun is cleared. That's what I've got here. So the trigger is set and ready to pull. The trigger pull on a Glock that comes straight from the factory out of the box is going to be very long. It's very long, and you hit a spongy trigger pull then. With this one, this is pointed at a berm next to me over here. With this one, here's the trigger pull. Here's the take-up. Hopefully you can see that well. That's it right there. That's as far as it goes before you hit the wall and you're ready to pull the trigger and fire the gun. I mean, it's just hardly there. When I first put this trigger in, over the first few shooting sessions that I had, I actually startled myself a few times, moving from target to target, starting to pull the trigger. It actually fired before I expected it to, and it startled me until I got used to the trigger. So because there's very little take up in it, just barely move, and you've hit the wall. You're ready to fire the gun. Now, if you listen, you'll hear the trigger. It's very, very audible and very crisp. That's a crisp trigger pull, unlike the one that comes out of the box. Now, another thing that's significant is the reset. It's shorter. You get tactile feedback on it, and you can feel it, and it's very short right there. It's ready to shoot again, just like that. That's a significant improvement over the original trigger in this Glock. Now, what you want to be careful of is, if you're just learning to shoot, maybe you bought your first Glock pistol, haven't been using these for a long time, I don't suggest going out and trading out any trigger on them. Learn to shoot them for quite a while, put lots of ammo through them, get to where you're competent with the gun and used to the gun, and then decide what kind of modifications you want to make on it based on what you're going to do with it. I didn't need a competition trigger. I didn't want a 3-pound trigger pull on this. What it does have is a connector on it now that is one that produces a trigger pull that is right at 4.5 pounds. It's about a pound less than the original 5.5-pound trigger pull. I've tested mine with a Wheeler trigger pull gauge, and over and over again, it breaks right at 4.5 pounds. It breaks cleanly at 4.5 pounds. So as a carry gun, as a shooter at the range, and everything that I do with it, and for the years I've shot with it, trading this trigger out made a significant improvement for me, both at the range and something that I have confidence with when I carry. As a comparison, again, no magazine, cleared gun. This is the Smith & Wesson M20. Remember I showed you how short the take-up was on that Glock? Now this is one of the best triggers on the market that comes out of the box. Very, very, very short, crisp trigger pull. And again, there's differences in what I'm saying here. I don't want to get ahead of myself or confuse anybody. The trigger pull itself on this is shorter than this, and it's easier to pull, even though the actual trigger weight is heavier than on the Glock. But look how long the take-up is on this before you hit the wall ready to fire. That's at least a ½ inch, maybe longer than that. Now, once you get there, you barely have to pull. Now, but you put that on a trigger gauge, the weight that it actually takes to make that trigger break is right at 6.5 pounds, as opposed to the 4.5 on this one. Yet this one's easier to pull because the trigger pull is actually shorter. The take-up is longer, but the trigger pull is very short. And the reset, very crisp and very short. So you barely have to move your finger on this one. You could actually use this one for competition right out of the box, do a lot with it. And of course you could with a Glock also, but it would be a big improvement on a carry gun if you actually wanted to use it for carry and for competition, to change it out with something like a skimmer trigger. So is there a benefit to trading out the trigger in your Glock pistol, or maybe in any other pistol you have? If you've shot them for quite some time, you're experienced, you're competent with the pistol, you're confident with it, you know what to do with it and how to handle it, then look at that as an improvement. Don't look at it as something that you'll drop in and all of a sudden make you a great shooter. It won't. It will help you improve the skills that you've already developed using the gun as it came out of the box. So, GlockTriggers.com is where this one came from, the skimmer trigger. I do recommend them. They did a good job putting these triggers together. It was easy to drop in. It's made a significant improvement in my carry gun. By the way, I don't have any financial relationship with them either. I just paid them to get the trigger. I do recommend them though. I would suggest that you look at them as one of the choices that you have online if you're considering changing out a trigger in a Glock pistol. I'm Mark, and I'll see you again very soon.